Support for Trifles comes from listeners like you, who support us through Patreon and Substack. Bonus material, thank you gifts, and more await at patreon.com/trifles and at trifles.substack.com. And now you can enjoy some Trifles swag, mugs, notepads, and oval stickers, available in our store. Find it at ihearofsherlock.com/merchandise.
Welcome to Trifles, a weekly podcast about the Sherlock Holmes stories.
It is, of course, a trifle, but there is nothing so important as trifles.
Yes, Boscombe Valley was mysterious, Shoscombe Place was old, and the lodge was hysterical, but there are so many other details to pick apart in the stories.
Pray, be precise as to details.
You know the plots, but what about the minutiae? Was Holmes more of a tea drinker or a coffee fancier? And what are all of the alcoholic drinks mentioned in the stories?
You are very inquisitive, Mr. Holmes.
It is my business to know what other people don't know.
Scott Monty and Bert Wolder will have the answers to these questions and more in Trifles.
The game's afoot.
Episode 492, on the real Swedish Pathological Society. Hello, and welcome to Trifles, the Sherlock Holmes podcast, where we look at the minutiae in the Sherlock Holmes stories. I'm Scott Monty.
I'm Bert Wolder.
And Bert, have you got a packet of Swedish fish handy?
Oh, I thought I did, and imagine my surprise when I ripped it open and I found out it was a package of Swedish meatballs. That's just been in the pantry too long.
Yeah.
Those things need to be refrigerated.
I was going to say, you need to get to IKEA.
Yeah.
And refill your stock there. They don't sell Swedish fish at IKEA, ironically.
That is ironic. The last time I was in IKEA, I didn't get out until like the weekend was over.
That's the maze they put you through. There's a shortcut. You can actually it's a hack at IKEA. There are shortcuts, so you don't have to follow the maze that they make you go through.
Oh.
So it's worth investigating.
Mm.
Well, we have a maze or I should say an amazing article to talk about this time. It is the first episode of the month, and that means we look at the Morley Montgomery Award-winning article. We are going through them chronologically, and we are up to 2008. And in this episode, we're talking about Matthias Bostrom's article from the winter 2008 Baker Street Journal, volume 58, number 4, The Humble Dr. Mortimer on the Real Pathological Society. And Matthias's investiture in the Baker Street Irregulars is the Swedish Pathological Society, so one would think that he would know something about this. We're about to find out. Meanwhile, if you would join us at Patreon or at Substack, we would be in your debt. All you have to do, and you can join either one as a free member, by the way. You don't have to necessarily pay to participate on these platforms. But for paying members, we do have ad-free versions of every episode and bonus content where you can hear a little more, whether it's behind the scenes or our Trifling Trifles episodes, which are shorter in length. We just give a quick snippet of thought to things. Those are available on Patreon and on Substack. So find us at patreon.com/trifles or trifles.substack.com. And make sure you check out our store where you can get a Trifles mug or a Trifles notepad. See what's available there and maybe buy them for a Sherlockian in your life or even yourself. Okay, Bert, my Swedish is a trifle rusty, but we find ourselves in the pages of the Baker Street Journal from 2008, a Morley Montgomery Award-winning article by Matthias Bostrom. What are we getting ourselves into?
We are getting ourselves into The Hound of the Baskervilles and Dr. Mortimer as a departure point because Matthias begins his essay, which is called The Humble Dr. Mortimer, on the real Swedish Pathological Society. He begins his essay by pointing us to that wonderful scene, that opening scene in The Hound of the Baskervilles, where, of course, Watson and Holmes have been out for a while, come back, find Dr. Mortimer's stick. Watson does his attempt to discern something about this so-called Mortimer. And in the course of all of that, we consult the medical dictionary and find out a lot about Mortimer, James, MRCS, Grimpen, Dartmoor, Devon, house surgeon at Charing Cross Hospital. But as you read through that paragraph, which Matthias gives us, you find that he was, James Mortimer, that is, Dr. Mortimer, winner of the Jackson Prize for Comparative Pathology with an essay entitled Is Disease a Reversion? He's a corresponding member of the Swedish Pathological Society. Well, Matthias is perhaps the first one ever to say, gee, I wonder what that's all about. And then takes us to dating The Hound of the Baskervilles, which he says, at first sight, this is easy. Holmes mentions 5 years have passed since 1884. However, chronologists have noted that other events in the canon make 1889 an impossible choice of year and have suggested different years from 1886 to 1900. Well, whichever year you pick, there's a problem with membership in the Swedish Pathological Society, says Matthias. There was no such society. In August 1917, when the professor of pathology Ulrich Quenzel welcomed his colleagues to a meeting in which they would found the first Swedish Pathological Society, he greeted only 8 people. These were all the pathologists in Sweden at the time, even in Mortimer's own country. There wasn't such a society until the turn of the century. The Pathological Society of Great Britain and Ireland was established in 1906. Well, to find the real Swedish Pathological Society, you have to consider the source, this medical dictionary which mentions it. Well, to compile that kind of who's who volume would be impossible unless you included, those who contributed the necessary facts. So the idea that Mortimer was a corresponding member of this foreign society probably came from Mortimer himself. And if Mortimer believes to have become a corresponding member of the society in his capacity as a pathologist, well, it's easy to understand that he might remember incorrectly the proper name, the full name of the society, especially if he didn't value membership especially highly. And that's how we get into tracking down this real group.
Yeah, so what we have here is really a historic search for this society or these societies and to see how we can actually draw the line or the thread to Dr. Mortimer. And Matthias takes us to the end of the 19th century. So there was only one Swedish society for doctors, Svenska Läkaresällskapet, the Swedish Society of Medicine. I'm sure I butchered that. You'll have to call a pathologist in for the autopsy on that word. He said it was founded in 1908 by physicians in Stockholm, and it was founded mainly to facilitate the group's ability to obtain foreign medical literature. King Gustav IV Adolf feared that the ideas of the French Revolution would take hold in Sweden and had for that reason prohibited import of literature, particularly from France. And the only periodical that was allowed into the country at the time was the Queen's French fashion magazine. But about 200 years earlier, medicine wasn't in great favor to be learned in Sweden. The pay was low, Not many studied medicine, and things changed throughout the 19th century. The profession became more popular among Swedish men, in contrast to the 17th century when it had become mostly, it attracted mostly ignorant foreign rogues. So you've got this increase of medical students, and there was an important development in the surgical profession. It was difficult in the 17th century, of course, to nurse the wounded in the field. That was for the barber surgeon, and barber surgeons belonged to the Barber Guild, which gave its members the authority to trim hair and beards as well as to bandage wounds. But during the 18th century, there was conflict between the medicine side of the profession and the surgical side, since the latter wanted to keep their guild privileges and at the same time expand into scientific medicine. So in 1797, the medicine profession and the surgeons merged into a joint profession, a decision that also paved the way for the Swedish Society of Medicine. And the purpose of this society was to gather physicians and encourage scientific progress. And this is typical of many professional organizations. It's really about the furtherance of knowledge, sharing of knowledge, learning from each other, etc. And the term corresponding member was changed in the statutes about a decade after its founding in 1808, and may have lived on informally. As late as 1979, the term was used again and in revised statutes of the society. So the statutes from 1819 had the new term foreign members. According to the custom of the time, foreign physicians sent, together with an enclosed curriculum vitae, a request for membership in the society. Sometimes that led to acceptance, sometimes it didn't, and that process, that custom, went on for many years.
So that's the environment we have where, for a time, because of the French Revolution, information from outside Sweden was dramatically curtailed. There was no Swedish Pathological Society around the time of the Hound of the Baskervilles. Dr. Mortimer was probably the source for this, but there was this Swedish Society of Medicine. And Matthias writes, not just any foreign doctor was accepted by the society. Among the first ones were the inventor of vaccination, Edward Jenner, the eminent German physician, Christian Wilhelm Hufland, the famous British surgeon, Astley Cooper, and the French pioneering physiologist, François Magendie. The society maintained a high standard when inviting foreign members to join, and at the beginning of the 1880s, the society had about 360 Swedish members and almost 170 foreign members. Of the 17 foreign members who were elected in 1882, all were professors. And from the start, the dominant branch of medical science was anatomical pathology, the theoretical discipline that came closest to practical medical science. And this was at a time when French, and particularly German and Austrian pathologists, made a great impact on the subject. Johannes Müller's and Theodor Schwann's discovery of the animal cell formed the basis of the knowledge about anatomical pathology. Müller worked closely with the Swedish scientist Anders Retzius. And the first Swedish anatomical pathologist was Axel Kay, born in 1832. He made a long tour of Germany, returned to Sweden in 1862, became a professor. Axel Kay was one of the most important persons in Swedish medical research of the late 19th century. He was a headmaster of a major institute, founded an important journal, president of the Swedish Society of Medicine in the 1870s, and then later again in the 1870s, and for many decades filled leading positions. And even the election process was very democratic. The members were registered Swedish doctors and pharmacists who had applied for membership and had been approved, as well as elected Swedish and foreign doctors. To be elected, you needed sponsorship in writing from 2 members. The proposal was announced within the society, and 1 month later, the voting took place. 2/3 of the voters had to approve the candidate. It was quite a big deal. Well, with his knowledge of everything that happened internationally, especially within pathology, Key would, of course, not miss the fact that a young British doctor had won the Jackson Prize. Key's own specialty was anatomical pathology, but his teacher in Berlin was also the father of comparative pathology. And surely Key had acquired some knowledge of this subject, which is the pathology of animal diseases in relation to humans.
Yeah. So here we have Key being a key figure and making Mortimer's association with the society an important one. We've got the essay that Mortimer wrote for his Jackson Prize called "Is Disease a Reversion?" And he wrote 2 more papers, Some Freaks of Atavism and Do We Progress? Both of these were mentioned in the short biography we read of Mortimer at the beginning of The Hound of the Baskervilles. Now, atavism had its glory days during the latter part of the 19th century, and this means a tendency to revert to your ancestral type. So kind of picking up on traits from generations before. And atavism concentrated on animals, which makes it partly related to comparative pathology. Now, Axel Key must have known about Mortimer's award-winning essay. He would also have been aware of Mortimer's papers. This is an important part of the work in the society. It's to read and review foreign medical books and journals. So Key and his colleagues must have noted that Mortimer's papers were in the Lancet and the Journal of Psychology and were extraordinary. Otherwise, Mortimer would never have been suggested as a foreign corresponding member of the society. After all, he's just a senior student at the time. And all others who were elected to the society were doctors with long CVs or important positions. And there's another person who couldn't have missed Mortimer's writings, and that was the father of comparative pathology himself, Rudolf Virchow, who lived until 1902 and with whom Axel Key had frequent correspondence. Virchow was based in Berlin. Perhaps Mortimer had visited with him. Maybe they corresponded. There's another interesting connection between Mortimer and Virchow, since Virchow was a famous anthropologist, particularly concerning the human cranium. Remember Mortimer's interest in Holmes's dolichocephalic skull. So it seems probable that either Key or Virchow knew of Mortimer's work. And if it was Virchow, he could have easily made his former student Key aware of what a brilliant mind Mortimer had in ways that perhaps weren't impressive yet on Mortimer's CV. And during the 1870s and 80s, no other member with this specialist knowledge was elected to the society. So Dr. Mortimer could surely have proven himself useful.
Interesting. So now, you can see that thanks to Matthias's research, Dr. Mortimer is rising in his eminence as a noted expert. But when exactly was Mortimer elected? Well, certainly not before 1881 and probably not after 1884. Presumably, he was awarded the Jackson Prize sometime during this period. And this was also the time when his papers were published. If he wasn't publicly active after 1884, you can imagine his names would have been forgotten quickly by Key and Virchow. No matter how brilliant he was, if the society at that point hadn't already made him a member, considering his youth and how unestablished he was when elected, it's likely he wasn't just the Jackson. It wasn't just the Jackson Prize that made him a corresponding member of the Swedish Society of Medicine, but thanks to the 2 papers that the final decision was made. Thus, he was elected in late 1883 or during 1884, and during that time he got married, left the Charing Cross Hospital, left his scientific life, moved to Dartmoor. Well, since the year was so turbulent, it's no wonder he didn't pay sufficient attention to this membership invitation from the Swedish Society of Medicine and how much it really meant. And Maybe he even lost the diploma when he moved. Such things happen to all of us. And if you can lose a walking stick, you can certainly lose a diploma. So when the medical directory later collected updates, he couldn't remember more than the fact that there was a Swedish society interested in pathology, or, in his own words, the Swedish Pathological Society.
So Matthias wraps it up saying, let's hope that this dabbler in science succeeded in finding the good life down on Dartmoor. Well, with or without hounds, I suppose. So he's got his like-minded man in Sir Charles. They sat together many an evening discussing the comparative anatomy of the Bushman and the Hottentot. But after the death of Sir Charles, with whom can he discuss science? No wonder he was so eager to examine Sherlock Holmes' skull. The poor scientist seemed totally understimulated. Or maybe he just realized in his humility that life doesn't always turn out the way you thought it would. He then thought about how strange it was that he could have missed the resemblance between Stapleton and the picture of Hugo Baskerville. After all, it was just the kind of atavism that he studied when he was a student, an eternity ago. But it no longer mattered. Not now, when the case was closed, and he could lean back in his armchair in his Dartmoor home with his wife at his side and a newly bought little spaniel puppy playing at the floor. Well, his thoughts drifted away to the shells on a far distant seashore and a great unknown ocean. Now, see, ocean, that's where the Swedish fish come from.
Yeah, well, the problem is if you're going to hook Swedish fish, you need one of those tiny little wrenches you get from IKEA to open them up if you want to eat them.
Well, if you're going to catch Swedish fish, first you need Swedish worms.
Oh, well, that's true. But that takes you right back to, these candies and things like that. And that's really just a trifle.
It is, of course, a trifle, but there is nothing so important as trifles.
Please join us again next week for another installment of Trifles. Show notes are available on SherlockHolmesPodcast.com. Please subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts and be sure to check out our longer show, I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere, where we interview notable Sherlockians and share news of the Sherlockian world.
You've taken my breath away, Mr. Holmes. Now, name your figure.
My professional charges are at a fixed rate. I do not vary them, save when I remit them altogether.